Trump proudly claimed it was all for the troops, patriotic gesture wrapped in honor, but then Jimmy Kimmel stepped in and ripped the curtain wide open, exposing what it actually was. And let's just say, it wasn't the tribute he wanted you to believe.
The sick individual who's making this happen is busy planning his big birthday parade, or as I'm calling it, Farty Gras. Is having a parade tomorrow. He claims the parade, which will cost American taxpayers somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million, is meant to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Army. And who better to lead that celebration than a felon who dodged the draft by getting a note from his father's podiatrist? And if you go to any of the big No Kings rallies on Saturday, make sure to stop by the Antifa accounting table to pick up your check. You will be paid.
On live television, Jimmy Kimmel did what no one in the White House expected. He pulled the mask off a so-called patriotic event and called it exactly what it was: a $50 million birthday parade for Donald Trump, dressed up as an army tribute. But that raised one chilling question. Why was a man who dodged the draft now leading the charge in a military celebration meant to honor real sacrifice? What followed that broadcast? Chaos. Trump was left scrambling, the illusion shattered, and the headlines quickly turned on him.
We're now one step closer to finding out which winning town, either Indianapolis or Oklahoma City, will host a much bigger parade than our president's G.I. Joe themed birthday party.
What does a $50 million celebration disguised as patriotism really look like? Picture this: tanks rolling down the streets, flags waving, speeches echoing through the air, all under the guise of honoring the troops. But Jimmy Kimmel saw through the spectacle. He didn't call it a tribute. He didn't call it tradition. To him, it looked more like a teenage birthday bash on steroids, just with a military budget. And that bizarre display, it was only the opening act.
So after all his talk about how this wasn't a birthday party for him, it kind of seemed like a birthday party. They wrapped his new iPad in a flag. It was a lot of fun. What a birthday. It wasn't just, and they gave him a firework show on top of that. There's Sleepy Don taking it all in. And in fairness, that's as close as he gets to being able to sleep with his wife, so he took the opportunity.
It all unraveled like a bizarre late-night comedy, complete with punchlines, awkward silences, and one painfully public hand rejection. Jimmy Kimmel didn't just question the money or the message, he went after the performance. From the over-the-top display to the moment Melania visibly pulled away from Trump's hand, a moment he dubbed the Slovenian snub, Jimmy didn't hold back. He even joked that this might be the closest Trump's gotten to sleeping next to his wife in years, but maybe it's not just Melania he's worried about.
There's a chance that the parade could get postponed because of weather tomorrow. Wouldn't that be a damn shame, wouldn't it?
That would be terrible.
I mean, Trump might have to break out that magic weather Sharpie to fix.
And Jimmy didn't miss a beat. What was meant to showcase strength and power suddenly came down to one surprisingly fragile detail: the hair. Because under the blazing sun, with cameras rolling and jets soaring overhead, all eyes drifted, not to the tanks, not to the speeches, but to whether Trump's hair would survive the breeze. In that moment, the illusion of control wavered, and Jimmy made sure the world noticed.
And then Trump wrapped things up with a positive message of inspiration.
Congratulations, congratulations. Welcome to the United States Army, and have a great life. Thank you very much. Have a great life. Thank you.
And then, in classic Trump fashion, he closed it all out with what he probably thought was a heartfelt message of inspiration. Congratulations, congratulations. Welcome to the United States Army, and have a great life. Just like that. As if he and the entire army had just gone through a messy breakup. Have a great life. For the event, rain was in the forecast, but nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to spoil Donald's big moment. He even tweeted that a rainy day parade, spelled with an E, brings good luck, which, honestly, sounds less like military tradition and more like something you say to a crying bride to keep the pictures from getting worse. But despite all the buildup, the tanks, the fireworks, and the ego, the turnout was embarrassingly underwhelming.
As Trump would say, there were record-setting crowds. The bleachers, you could see, were mostly empty. The crowds were sparse. There was not a whole lot of cheering for the tanks and military vehicles. This tank was very squeaky. This one could have used some of Diddy's baby oil to get it going a little bit.
As Jimmy pointed out, the real crowd wasn't gathered at the parade. It was out in the streets, watching from a distance or not watching at all. And when Jimmy name drops Boise, Idaho, you know he's not joking. He said even the most low-key towns in America made more noise that day than Trump's so-called historic celebration. Because while Trump rolled out tanks and fireworks, the response across the country? Crickets. Just slightly louder ones in Boise.
This was the largest military parade in the United States since the end of the Gulf War. You know, originally it wasn't supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be small. A few months ago, Pete Hegseth came to Trump with plans for this parade that only included 3 tanks. And you know, this is Trump's birthday. He was furious. Reports say he screamed at him. He said, 3 tanks. He said, I pull you off Fox News. I make you Secretary of Defense. I stand behind you when you're accused of sexual assault and being a drunk and texting the war plans to a reporter. I do all that for you. And this is the tanks I get?
As Jimmy told it, this wasn't just a paradate, it was payback. And when the tanks didn't match the ego, Meltdown wasn't far behind. Turns out, while Trump was busy counting tanks, the rest of the country was counting steps. But just as the real crowds made their voices heard, the old narrative came roaring back. What happens when the cameras stop showing what's happening and start repeating what never did? Don't look away, because this is where fiction starts fighting the fact.
Demonstration in Torrance down in the South Bay here. There were thousands of people there, all peaceful, friendly, no trouble. There weren't even any police around, but there were a lot of very creative signs. There are so many great signs like this. If Melania doesn't have to live with them, why do we?
So Jimmy highlighted what the cameras at the parade didn't. The protests weren't just loud. They were sharp, they were clever, and they were unmistakably peaceful. No chaos, no tear gas, no clashes with police. Just cardboard signs, sunscreen, and 1,000 creative ways to say one thing loud and clear. We're not buying it.
It's been very strange to watch the president and his minions blatantly lying about what isn't happening in the city where we currently are, telling us there are riots when that is not the case, and also saying that the protesters aren't even protesters, they're actors being paid.
People are agitators, they're paid. They're professionals. They're probably paid, many of them, as you know. They're professionals.
So many of them are paid protesters.
These are paid insurrectionists.
They are paid agitators.
These are paid troublemakers.
Who's funding these protests?
Who is funding these insurrectionists?
These have to be paid troublemakers.
We've seen the ads put up on Craigslist offering people thousands of dollars a week.
They are bought and paid for flash mobs.
The majority of these people are paid protesters.
Paid protesters.
Paid protesters.
Paid agitators.
Paid.
Jimmy wasn't speculating about what could happen. He was calling out what already had. While Trump stirred fears about paid protesters and looming riots, the reality on the ground was something else entirely. Federal agents were separating nannies from children in public parks. No fires, no mobs, just families caught off guard, quiet prayers, and the kind of fear that doesn't make headlines, but leaves a mark. That was the real scene outside the parade, not the one with tanks and speeches, the one with strollers, silence, and stunned faces.
And then it was time for the man who knows more than all of the generals combined to show off his military acumen.
The U.S. Army has driven bayonets into the heart of sinister empires, crushed the ambitions of evil tyrants beneath the threads of American tanks.
That's right. Don't thread on me, tanks. It sounds like someone forgot to apply his flamin' hot Fixodent this morning.
There is no earthly force more powerful than the brave heart of a U.S. infantryman.
Don't forget the infree women. I mean, or Oprah infree. She's good too. And it was 10 years ago today that Donald Trump rode down that golden escalator to announce he was running for president. 10 years. That's longer than Seinfeld was on the air, longer than the Beatles were together. And imagine how much grief we could have avoided if they just run that escalator in reverse. They made it go up instead of down. We would have none of this trouble.
10 years, endless headlines, and one golden escalator later, Jimmy Kimmel's punchline landed more like a warning. What started as spectacle became a presidency, and what looked like a parade turned out to be a mirror, reflecting more about us than we'd like to admit. This wasn't just about tanks or flags, it was about empty seats, inflated claims, and protests that quietly told a different story. Kimmel didn't just mock the moment, he exposed it. Live, on air, when the performance cracked and reality came flooding through. Because in the end, what we choose to celebrate reveals what we're willing to accept. And sometimes the loudest truth comes not from the stage, but from the people holding signs in the sun. This video is based entirely on real televised segments, verified reports, and public records. No speculation, just reflection.